Welcome to Anews. I'm Umar Taslim and you're watching Turkey's Diplomacy. Global attention remains divided as Ukraine continues to receive massive support from the West, while Palestinians face unprecedented suffering under Israeli attacks. In Europe, leaders warn of Russian threats to continental security, yet remain silent as Israel expands its aggression across the region. In Gaza, over 62,000 civilians, mostly women and children, have been killed amid a man-made famine and the targeting of journalists. Today, I'll be discussing some of the most pressing issues being faced by Palestinians and the West's double standards when it comes to ending wars. Joining me on the program today are Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, and Dr. Nurhan Al-Baya, who's a professor of strategic studies at the Istanbul Aydın University and a consultant for the United Nations Development Program.
Israel's military on Wednesday announced the first steps of an operation to take over Gaza City, one of the last major areas of the enclave it does not already control. Israel's military spokesperson, Brigadier General Efi Defrin, said IDF forces were now holding the outskirts of Gaza's biggest urban center. The same day, Israel's military called up tens of thousands of reservists in preparation for the expected assault. A military official briefing reporters earlier on Wednesday said reserve soldiers would not report for duty until September. Those developments were met with dismay by Palestinians in Gaza, including this man, who called it, quote, catastrophic news, and said he had been hoping to hear about a truce instead. Even as Israel's military announced the start of the operation in Gaza City and called up the reservists, the government said it was considering a new ceasefire proposal to pause nearly 2 years of war. Hamas has already accepted a proposal put forward by Arab mediators for a 60-day ceasefire that would involve releasing some of the remaining hostages held by Hamas and freeing Palestinian prisoners in Israel. In a statement on Telegram, Hamas accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of obstructing the ceasefire deal in favor of continuing a, quote, brutal war against innocent civilians in Gaza City. Many of Israel's closest allies have urged the government to reconsider the planned assault. However, Netanyahu is under pressure from some far-right members of his coalition to reject a temporary ceasefire, continue the war, and pursue the annexation of the territory. The Israeli government has said all the 50 remaining hostages must be released at once. Israeli authorities believe that 20 are still alive. Hamas has said it would release all remaining hostages in exchange for an end to war. Israel has maintained it will not end the war before Hamas disarms.
Welcome back to the program. Welcome to my guests today, Dr. Mehmet Çelik, Daily Sabah's editorial coordinator, and Dr. Nurhan Al-Baya, who is a professor at Istanbul Aydın University. Dr. Mehmet, I'll start with you first. We've been seeing how there have been meetings over the past few weeks regarding Ukraine, how to end the war in Ukraine, how to pressure Russia. But we haven't seen that when it comes to the suffering of the Palestinians. Let's start with the discrepancy first, Mehmet. Tell me about the double standards that we're seeing today when it comes to Ukraine. There's pressure. European leaders are pushing to end the war in Ukraine, but there's no such pressure on Israel.
Well, I mean, that's a very sheer and clear exposure of Western double standards on humans. How they view a human being, it differs depending, and for many decades it differed depending on their color. Now it differs where they come from geographically, what religion they belong to, at many different levels, not just about even when we talk about what's happening in Gaza or what's happening in different parts of Africa, what happened in the heart of Europe, in Srebrenica, right? What happened in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. But when it was the Ukrainian refugees getting on the trains, as you may recall, the media was announcing it as if, you know, this is something very unacceptable, as they were saying, oh, these people, refugees getting on the trains, they have blue eyes and blonde hair. They're just like one of us, as if the refugees coming from Syria into Europe, the refugees coming from Northern Africa, the refugees or those escaping conflicts from different parts of the world, as if they are a different kind of human beings. This is how the West sees humanity, unfortunately. When it comes to Gaza, I mean, we never saw a picture where Trump, as the host of The Apprentice show, behind his table, and all the strong European leaders sitting across from him, trying to figure out what they will do with a conflict they are part of, basically. I would say, they are part of the conflict in Gaza as well. What is Israel using when they're attacking? What kind of weapons are they using? What kind of political support do they have behind themselves? What kind of economic support do they have with them when they're attacking Palestinians, when they have been attacking Palestinians for the past 7 decades or more, right? When they are using their weapons, the Western alliance is supporting what's Israel doing. When Israel is using starvation, and it's not a famine, it's starvation, as a weapon against the Palestinians in a systemic matter, the West is part of that. The West does not stop that, but it is going to stop the Russia and Ukraine conflict. The whole Western alliance is getting together. How can we stop this? Of course, they should stop what's happening in Ukraine and find a solution to that crisis there too. But there is also a genocide taking place in Gaza. There are problems in different parts of Africa, conflicts. They should also treat them as human beings too. But this is, that double standard, that hypocrisy when it comes to human rights, something that they have been propagated for many, many years. When it comes to the lives of those who don't share the same skin color as them, same geographical location, same religion, then we see a very clear double standard there. This has been part of what Europe has built itself upon. I mean, let's go back to what they did to native indigenous people, right? Let's go to what happened. What was the motivation in attacking Vietnam or trying to get Vietnam? What was the motivation when they tried to fight over Afghanistan? What was the motivation? Was it really to bring democracy and destroy the WMDs in Iraq? When Syria was suffering from the world for over 10 years, who tried to find a solution to bring the conflict to an end? When millions were displaced, when over 1 million people were killed, when an attack happened, as you will remember, there's that picture of all the world leaders arm in arm walking in France when a Charlie Hebdo attack happened. When do we see a picture like that? When will we see a picture like that or photograph coming from world leaders united, standing against against the genocide taking place in Gaza? Of course, that double standard is embedded in the global governance that is led by the so-called powerful states, not the states that would try to establish a just global governance. It's the rule of the powerful that goes, not the actual rules that would serve who is right, who is wrong.
Mehmet, also just to add to what you've just mentioned, a few years ago, you might remember there were mass graves that were discovered in Ukraine, and then how Russia was criticized, it's atrocity, it's a genocide. The international media was condemning Russian actions, but we've never seen the same response for Palestinians. That's also a mass grave as well, the occupied Gaza Strip. We've seen that, but look at the difference over there.
I mean, the mayor, the whole Western ideals that they have been propagating against, using them as an instrument for the rest of the world, in a way to go and invade and spread democracy to the rest of the world, as they would frame it. They are mere instruments to carry out what's for their best interest. And that double standard today It is in Gaza, unfortunately, and there's a, I think it's what's taking place today. I mean, with the whole mass invasion plan, with the what's taking place, the new settlement plans, illegal settlement plans in West Bank, and the ultimate aim to take over Jerusalem and Al-Quds. These are all, will be remembered with very dark stains. But I think as long as the global governance system doesn't change, as long as international institutions are just simple buildings with people in them without actual tangible actions and rules that would be applied, this history will repeat itself.
Nurhan, I want to come to you now. We've seen how Europe has been backing Ukraine in its war against Russia. But when you look at, Israel's plans there, Netanyahu has always mentioned there's a plan for a greater Israel, which comprises of occupying many other countries, neighboring countries. We've never seen, Middle Eastern leaders defend Palestinians like the Europeans have defended the Ukrainians. Why has the Middle East remained silent for such a large extent?
Well, I have to start with the most major reason, which is the economic interest. Economic interest plays a very, very major role in this silence mood. Because I will give you a very recent example, just happened a couple of weeks ago. The agreement, Israel-Egypt agreement, natural gas agreement, which it's the biggest agreement happened between those countries.
$35 billion?
Exactly, $35 billion in this agreement, which will start in the beginning of 2026. Israel will supply Egypt with 20 billion cubic meters of gas annually. In normal cases, or in the previous years, Israel was supplying Egypt with 4.5 cubic meters, now 20 billion cubic meters annually. What will happen with this natural gas, after Israel supplying Egypt with this gas, it will be liquefied in Egypt, and then it will be exported to Europe and different markets. This is a very simple, recent example of economic interest. Another point, the geopolitical and alliances, as Dr. Mehmet just mentioned. The normalization agreements, which in another world, peace agreements. Such countries like, for example, nowadays, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, they are normalizing now dealing with Israel in a normal way, even after what's happening in Gaza. But, and by the way, these normalization behaviors, why? Because of another types of interest, military, for military purposes, for security purposes, for technological purposes, political purposes. So when they raise their voice up, and if they will try in front of the people or their nation opposing Israel loudly, it will not work, and they will have this threat or fear to lose those interests from Israel. Another important point which Arab countries really suffers, the religious division. Arab countries, especially, and Middle East in general, they are suffering from religious division, especially Sunni-Shia conflict or division. Arab countries, they are deeply divided along sectarian lines. And we have major plays, Saudi Arabia and Iran, for example. So
that has been a very long rivalry.
Exactly. So in this case, Saudi Arabia will prioritize counting Iran more than prioritizing the Gaza or Israel-Palestinian conflict. This is another example.
Mehmet, there's one country, Türkiye, which has been supporting the Palestinian cause. We've heard from President Erdogan. We've seen what he has done, the actions that Türkiye has taken, the actions that the Turkish government has taken in terms of NGOs, in terms of providing aid, in terms of supporting the Palestinian cause. Give us a brief example of the actions that Türkiye has taken so far. We all know there have been protests. The Turkish government has stopped trading with Israel. NGOs are now on the ground in the occupied Gaza Strip. Tell us more about these actions, Mehmet.
Well, first of all, before October 7 even, the Palestinian struggle and the occupation has been at the very center of Turkish public psyche and public opinion and political psyche for many, many years. This is something that is held above politics, regardless of the domestic political divisions within Türkiye. When it comes to Palestine, it has a very special place on every citizen's heart. In addition, what is more important, I think, is that since October 7, Türkiye has been a country that has taken actual tangible results, tangible steps to put pressure on Israel. First of all, Türkiye halted trade relations, one of the very few countries that has done that. Türkiye has applied to be part of ICJ case against Israel. Türkiye has been diplomatically using every possible channel to allow or to increase the humanitarian aid delivery. Türkiye, through its foreign ministry, led by Mr. Fidan, has been taking all the steps to keep the negotiations, ceasefire negotiations, lively. Türkiye has proposed to have a guarantor system in the initial days to find a solution in the initial phases of this conflict since October 7. At every international platform, Türkiye has kept the Palestine issue lively, and Mr. Erdogan has been a very vocal, very effectively delivering many speeches at different international platforms, domestic platforms, to keep the issue alive in the eyes of international media or the media in general in Türkiye. I think, if that sensitivity, if that diplomatic effort was carried out by the Muslim countries around the world at the same level, things could have been different. We just mentioned the Gulf countries, but what about the South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries? What about those countries that are not Muslim, but they still have some humanitarian concerns just simply for being human beings, and they take action or take a stance against what Israel is doing in the occupied territories, like Spain, like Ireland, for example. From a very individual level, through Turkey's citizens to the leadership, there is no discrepancy between the people and the government and the state when it comes to Palestine. In the Western countries, we see many protests. Why? So that their governments can change their position when it comes to Palestine or when it comes to Israel. So they can put pressure on their governments, and that could be leading to a policy change. In Türkiye, we have a very parallel position between what the public thinks about Palestine and what the government or the state thinks. So there's that unity at least. But if there was unity in other states, in the Muslim world, things could have been different. Türkiye, in addition to Qatar and Egypt, is also using backdoor diplomacy through intelligence and other channels. We know that they're pushing for that ceasefire negotiations or delivery of humanitarian aid to be more open. Mr. Fidan visited Rafah Gate, Rafah border crossing. Before October 7, many criticized Türkiye because Turkey was normalizing ties with Israel. How Turkey is looking at these issues is, before October 7, is that for even normalizing ties with Israel would have been even good for the Palestinian cause, because then they can actually have dialogue to make the situation better, or to find a better solution to the ongoing occupation, perhaps maybe even leading to a two-state solution. Turkey sees the only solution as a two-state solution based on 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of a free and sovereign Palestine, with Palestine recognized as a state by the international community. Now, can Turkey do much more by itself? It's very difficult. There's material constraints to Turkey's power. Everybody knows that when you have a power like United States or major European countries supporting Israel, you have to be very strong to face that. In addition, increasing hard conflict is not an option as a way to find solution, as the tensions are already very fragile in the Middle East. We had Lebanon being attacked by Israel. We had Syria. Damascus was bombed by Israel very recently. Iran conflict, right? Iraq is just settling right now. The only safe island in our region, really, even if you compare it with the Black Sea region, with the conflict there, east of Greece, has been Turkey. If you look all around it, there's conflict. And that has been a lot to do with how Turkey sees diplomacy as a way to find solutions to the conflicts, rather than wars or intensifying tensions. But unfortunately, when you have a Zionist regime in front of you that deals with conflict without recognizing any sort of norms, any sort of international law, any sort of international humanitarian law or otherwise, it becomes very difficult to find a solution through diplomacy. A regime that sees its own people above the rest of us, then it becomes very difficult to come to find a common ground for dialogue even.
Nurhan, a question that everyone is asking, not just today, but over the past few years, is why have international organizations failed to prosecute Israel? We've seen ICC arrest warrants being released for Netanyahu and his cabinet members. We've seen the UN taking actions. We've seen the UN saying that this is a genocide, while Western leaders have denied that. Why are these organizations failing to prosecute Israel? And like Mehmet said, if you're being supported by the United States, then it's very difficult to fight. So tell me more about that. Why have these organizations failed to prosecute Israel?
Actually, I have been asked this question constantly since the beginning of Gaza war, and I totally agree with what Dr. Mehmet said. But we have to know that the failure behind the prosecute Israel it reflects a combination of, number one, geopolitical imbalances, geopolitical power imbalances, number one. Number two, legal challenges. Number three, institutional weaknesses. Here, we have to mention, number one, U.S. veto power. In each United Nations Security Council session, U.S. using its veto power to block, to ban any criticize or sanction against Israel. This is something so important. This is the most major reason behind the failure to prosecute Israel. This is number one. Number two, Western power. Again, we will talk about it. If we can go back to October 7th, the reactions of European leaders, if you remember, was what? All of them. They agreed to say the same sentence.
Hamas terrorist attack.
Number one. Number two, Israel has the right to defend itself. So this was number two. Number three, regarding legal challenges, now the ICC, International Criminal Court, why they couldn't till now take serious action, which so many people, they are wondering, they are questioning this. Here I have to highlight a very, very important point, which Israel actually, it's not a signatory of Rome Statute. This treaty actually established ICC, International Crime Court. So this is the reason behind why till now ICC, International Crime Court, couldn't take any serious action, because this limits the main role or the main job of ICC. They cannot till now take serious action because Israel is not a signatory on Rome Statute. Another important point, which is the political double standard, as Dr. Mehmet mentioned in the beginning. This is something, it's now very obvious from European leaders. I think we all saw a couple of days ago the photo that has been spread on social media on the Trump. He was sitting, President Trump, in front of him, the all Westerns, powerful actually, Western leaders. So when you accept on Gaza people what's happening, and at the same time you refuse what's happening in Ukraine, which if I will take both of them as comparison, if I'm gonna compare both situations, this is a very clear double standard. Again, normalizing Israel's actions. Because, you know, for more than 7 decades, Israel is practicing this violence in so many shapes. But because we are seeing this for so many decades, or actually leaders, they are seeing this for so many decades with no solutions, so this reduces the power of international organization, or I can say it with different words, the urgency of international organization to take action. Why? Because we are seeing this for more than 7 decades, so it became so normal, unfortunately.
It has been normalized. And
unfortunately.
Another aspect here is, you know, Western media that has normalized and enabled Israel's genocide of the Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip. Mehmet, you've been leading Daily Sabah, Turkey's best-selling newspaper. Tell me about the media bias. How does this media bias build around the current situation in the occupied Gaza Strip?
Before I answer your question, I just want to add one point, if I may, to Dr. Albaya's point about the international institutions. When the World War ended, what was established? League of Nations, to address, at least find solutions to the problems of the time. When the World War II ended at Yalta, the world's powerful leaders, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin got together in 1945, and eventually that conference led to the establishment of United Nations. Who established the United Nations? The powerful states at the time. Why? To ensure that a global system could be established to ensure their interests are protected. Things have changed. It is no longer a bipolar world system. It's a multipolar world system. There's many different problems that the global governance needs to find solution to. And the United Nations is failing to find problems like this immigration, for example, like growing global warming, like the AI, for example, that will become, that is turning into a problem in some areas. internationally. Cybersecurity, for example, space, right? So international institutions, especially the United Nations, needs to reform itself to find solutions to the ongoing crisis around the world. And one specific area with the United Nations is the United Nations Security Council. When there is a permanent five, has the right to veto any resolutions that is, or any decisions that is not aligned with their interests, they go simply and veto it. This is why Mr. Erdogan very rightfully says the world is bigger than five. Right? There's not one Muslim nation, 2 billion Muslims, but not one Muslim nation that is represented at the United Nations Security Council. There is not one African country represented at the UNSC, at the Security Council. But when there is the problems of the Muslims, who will solve their problems? Who will try to find the solutions? When there is problems, and there have been a lot of problems, there are still problems in the African continent, who will advocate for their rights or try to bring this issue at the center of United Nations and have some tangible results for their problems? It will not be United States as long as its interests are not secured. It will not be Russia. It will not be China. Who will do it then? This is why a reform is necessary. It's a must for the international institution to be able to provide solutions. We cannot blame them when they're dysfunctional. International institutions are failing because they're dysfunctional, because they no longer can serve to the global governments and to more than nearly 200 countries around the world equally. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to media bias, I think, we are, of course, criticizing the media bias in the BBC, CNN, mainstream Western media's coverage. But what Gaza also exposed is that bias. Because we no longer only follow world events through CNN and BBC. We no longer have to wait 24 hours for the newspaper to come out or for the news channels, TVs, to frame however they want to frame their agenda or their coverage. We no longer have to wait for the gatekeepers in the editorial newsrooms to see if they will allow a Gaza-related story into their newsroom and bring it to our screens at our homes or wherever we're watching TV. We now have our mobile phones, and Gaza journalists are live streaming from their mobile phones. It's in everyone's pocket. So that discourse, that mainstream narrative about Israel's right to protect itself has been diminished, has been destroyed by an alternative media narrative now. And that is being live streamed. That genocide taking place in Gaza right now is live streamed in all our pockets. It's accessible. At the same time, we should also recognize that Israel is deliberately targeting journalists. Israel has killed over 200 journalists, deliberately targeting them to silence their voice, to silence their efforts to bring out the truth, to expose the reality on the ground. Israel is blocking all the international media from actually going there and covering it. But those Gazan journalists risking their lives, very recently we had some journalists killed. If it was, imagine the Western ideals, the Western norms that always talk about press freedom. There's again that exposure of their bias and their hypocrisy and their double standards. When it is Gazan journalists being targeted deliberately, everybody's silent, and even including the Western media is silent.
Just because Israel says that they were working for Hamas. That doesn't make sense, does it?
Israel sees no limits, no restrictions on who they will attack, what they will attack. That's Israel. But those Western countries that have for decades and decades talked about human rights, democracy, freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of press. Now that journalists are being killed, over 200 journalists have been killed deliberately by Israel for exposing the truth, and we don't hear any Western countries carrying that to their headlines, in their newsrooms. I mean, even when journalists are attacked, and the journalists are, even in their narrative, in their how they construct their headlines, from the photo that they use to even in between lines, it says Gaza was attacked. Who attacked Gaza? Exactly. Children were attacked. 100 children died.
They're not
what did
the
they die?
perpetrator.
What did they? Why did they die? Who killed them? They're even not exposing the actor behind all this destruction, the actor behind all this devastation and catastrophe that's taken place in Gaza. Let alone, the talking about press freedom. I mean, we see starvation. Children, three people died yesterday from systemic starvation. They didn't die because airstrikes hit them, because starvation in 2025, in the 21st century, is being used against people. And if this is not genocide, then what is? We said, United Nations was built in 1945 to say never again, right? But it is happening. So that system is dysfunctional to find solutions at many different levels.
Nurhan, I'll come to you for our final question. Is moral conscience dead? Do you think that the world has failed to, care about the Palestinians? We're seeing videos, we're seeing images, we're seeing pictures. Children without limbs. We're seeing children who have lost their entire family members. And we've seen how Israel has asked Palestinians to queue in massive lines and then deliberately shoot at them while they're waiting for humanitarian aid. What is the appropriate outcome that we need today? How can we fix this genocide? How can we end this? How can we allow the Palestinians to live freely once again?
Okay, here we have actually two arguments. Those who say that the global conscience dead, they are proving them by the inaction of world and international community, Arabs, Middle Eastern, Eastern, Asian, etc. We cannot say actually they are wrong, because we need solution. We are waiting actions. I don't want to hear speeches. Since October 7th, we are just watching speeches, hearing speeches from this president, from that president. That's it. Others, they are actually speechless, which is, to be honest, so funny. Some of them from Arab countries, actually, which is really doesn't make sense. So you cannot blame them, actually, those who are believing that global conscience dead, because they are still waiting for real action. They are just watching failure of international organizations, failure of the whole international community, actually, failure from the political leaders all around the world. Nothing. But let's move to the other argument, which those who are still believing that no, the global conscience still alive, because we can see this very clearly in the student protesting, student movements, the protests all around the world, the shift in global opinion as well, from so many Western nations, American people as well, Canadian, Australian, Asian, all around the world. Plus, the humanitarian aid from international organizations, not only United Nations. I can take here a very simple example. Turkish Red Crescent, the huge effort they put, kitchens, mobile clinics, humanitarian aid, etc. So this is the other argument which I personally agree with, and I totally believe that no, still the global conscience is alive. I can see it clearly, and we will still, and we are still waiting for a real ceasefire. We are still waiting from international community for serious negotiation between Israel and Hamas to stop this genocide. Actually, since October 7th, it's catastrophe. It's disaster. I'm really speechless. I cannot find any appropriate word to describe what's happening. I just need here, because I just mentioned that I totally agree with the second argument, which is the global conscience still alive. Here I will mention some real numbers issued by United Nations and UNRWA in the latest report, which as per August 2025. I have to highlight that nearly 360 UNRWA team members have been killed since the start of the war in Gaza in October 7th, 2023. This is so crucial. Number two, across Gaza and between 4th and 10th of August 2025, UNRWA team provided 4,784 medical consultation for postnatal and pregnant women under the risk. Number three, 2,897 dental and oral health consultation in fixed and mobile clinics provided by United Nations and UNRWA. 1,794 rehabilitation and physical therapy services sessions in health centers and medical points in Gaza. UNRWA also remains one of the largest providers of psychological health and mental care in Gaza. UNRWA has or provided 2,083 cases through individual consultation, psychological first aid awareness session, and to address cases of gender-based violence. This has been issued as per August 2025 from UNRWA and United Nations.
Mehmet, any final comments before we bring the program to a close?
Well, I think, we are criticizing the double standards, but that double standard is very clearly exposed. I think this is a reality. We shouldn't, the Western media and Western psyche puts a difference and discrepancy between different conflicts between human beings. But what is taking place in Ukraine shouldn't have a difference shouldn't be held or treated differently when it comes to civilian lives when compared to what's taking place in Gaza. What's taking place in Gaza shouldn't be different than what's taking place in Sudan, for example. I think that humanity will find its solution when humans are treated as humans, not based on their color or geographical location or religion when there is a conflict.
Dr. Mehmet and Dr. Nurhan, thank you for being on the program today. It was a pleasure listening to your analysis.
Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.